And one of the greatest things you can do in your life is to trust that your body is incredibly wise and that you have the ability to have a relationship with it. And that if you choose to do that, you will access so much richness and power in your life. To not give away your sovereignty to any sort of outside source, to always give yourself the permission and the right to know that you're most connected to this divine tool and that it will reveal to you all of its beauty and all of its technology and insight if you commence that understanding and that trust in that relationship.
Welcome to the Divine Hangout. I'm your host, Hillary Jubilee. It is my intention that when you listen to this podcast, you experience an increase in peace, abundance, and divine miracles in your life experience. If you love all things spirituality, wellness, healing, manifestation, and miracles, you are in the exact right place at the exact right time. Let's enter the portal together. Welcome to the Divine Hangout. It's Hillary, and today I'm joined by Brian Carew. Brian is an intuitive embodiment and erotic coach, and I am super excited to speak with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
I interviewed your now fiance a few weeks back because you guys got engaged recently, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And Alexia and I were talking a lot about sexual energy and sex magic. And I had some questions related to those types of things for men. And she was like, oh, my partner does this. So I'm really excited to dive into these topics with you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so maybe could you start by saying or like explaining what sexual life force energy cultivation is?
Absolutely. I love this question. So yeah, I like to distinguish the word sex or like sex first, to put it into a broader context. I believe that in like modern society or maybe Western society, sex is seen as the act, whereas I see sex as the like creation. It's the ability to create something, and life is always creating things all the time, like ideas or physical manifestation of something. And then the life force, it's the same thing, that ability to bring forward life. And what is life? Well, broadening its definition to consciousness or anything that moves, really, honestly. So that's the definition of sexual life force energy that I like to use, that it's not just intercourse, but it's like life proliferating itself and expressing itself in different ways, and the energy that's needed to do that. And then the cultivation piece is cultivating an understanding, a relationship, a connection to that energy that resides within us. It's something that we can cultivate and we can understand and we can talk about it, but really what it is an experience, is something to develop a relationship with through various modalities, let's say.
So, and why do you think it's important to focus on?
Yeah, I think it's important to focus on because it is the driving force of life, and it is such a potent and powerful energy that I see kind of two pathways. Either you don't work with it, and then it will control you, and you become a slave to it in some shape or form. And then because it's so powerful, that can hurtful things can occur. Suffering and stuff like that because of an unconscious use. Uh, and then the other path is work with it, understand it, and become the master of it so that you're really knowing what's going on there and you're using it in its highest form.
Okay. And with like the sexual energy cultivation, would you say you direct that into any area of life? Like it's not just, like you said, it's not just the physical act. It's an energy that can be cultivated and then that power is used throughout your life.
Yeah, definitely. So this idea of so with like sexual energy cultivation, um, this idea of stimulating oneself or getting aroused, and then and moving that sensation through the body so the body comes an erogenous zone. And on more of a, let's say, anatomical, biological perspective, it's just this idea that I'm moving charged particles throughout my body, which, let's just say breathing, moving oxygen throughout my body, for example. This is nourishing my organs. This is getting me into a deeper state of recognition with my body, and I feel more energized. And now I can do something with that. Whereas normally, if we get stimulated or aroused, it's like I want to act in a strictly, let's say, sexual intercourse way, which is a great way to use it. Fantastic, absolutely. And it can be used in other ways. It can be used in to channel that into your work, into your expression, and really to a degree, I believe that whether consciously or unconsciously, sexual life force energy is in all that we do. It's just that we've been separated from that. We've just forgot. And now we're remembering that, oh, I can actually express myself in all these ways, and connecting to that pleasurable state can enhance the way that I do things.
Okay. And then going to sex magic, like Alexia and I were talking about. Like I had said in that episode, like I had learned about this through how to Think and Grow Rich and the chapter. Have you read that?
I have, yeah, and I Napoleon Hill, right?
Yeah, and there's just one
Okay.
chapter about sex energy transmutation, and
Yeah.
he just is so high level with it, and it always intrigued me. But obviously, it was written a long time ago, and they couldn't talk about it because it would have been like the devil and shut down or whatever. But that it was just like the idea of it intrigued me, and then I feel like Alexia explained it pretty well for like what a woman would do when like to um to use sex as a manifestation practice. So I think, but I was just wondering if it's slightly different for men because there was something about that she was saying that you talk about, which is like cycling the energy. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. Where's a good place to start? So I think maybe it's good to distinguish, again, this is my opinion, I'm not trying to push this on anyone, the difference between a man and a woman and what's available to them, and then putting that in the context that I see men and women as two varying degrees of the same thing. So they're the varying, like, polar or opposite ends of one thing. Uh, so in a man's context, from what I've learned and the practices that I've come from, which is like Taoism, traditional Chinese medicine, to a degree, I'd say Tantra as well, or like that's like more Indian roots. This idea that men are the embodiment of fire, so they're bringing forward the heat and the that energy to push something forward, whereas the woman is more of a water quality and takes time to warm that up. And I see the woman's embodiment as the ability to become this vessel and is like a portal of creation. So women, I believe it's good for women to know and men to know that women are more powerful sexually. They just are. Like women create life and in a physical standpoint can actually create something and then can, I believe, have more power to manifest. But men have the ability to harness their fire and their power, which allows them to manifest more in a 3D way, in the way that they come forward in their mission and their direction and their focus in life. So I believe that women have the ability to work more with the realms of uh, non-material creation, I guess you could say. Like they can connect to the essence, nature, and then men are on the earth more like driven by their action purpose. So it gives us an ability to not be so distracted and to hold the energy within themselves so they can be more integral and be more focused in their mind and in their energy and their emotions. And that is how I see the manifestation coming about for men is so holding the seed, learning how to expand the container of your body, moving that energy through, and not being a victim, or maybe victim isn't the right word, but a slave to that lustful sensation, and therefore, yeah, manifesting a more integral reality for themselves.
Okay. So would you say that it's paramount that men do that, like that they hold on to their seed? Because I feel like that's a very small portion of like the population that is aware of that, or like yeah, I feel like a lot of people are just unconscious.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great practice, and there's a few things that are really important to address because in Western culture, we often take a full concept and just draw a piece out of it that we want, and we say, okay, well, I just want that piece, and that'll be a good enough. Yoga is a great example, right? You know, there's 8 limbs to yoga, and the West has taken asana, which is posture, which is really just a step towards the whole point of yoga, which is to enlighten yourself, right? To connect to be unified with the original energy. And I think semen retention is a similar thing. People like are tell themselves, I'm just going to hold my semen, and the no fap movement is not something I'm a fan of. I think it's the analogy I like to make is if you have an engine and it can only tolerate a certain amount of energy, it's going to not function properly or explode. So if you're holding your semen, and if you're a man listening to this, you have to learn how to cultivate the ability to move it through your body and to expand the container so that you don't just get frustrated or you get blue balls. So I think it's a great practice. It just needs to be in conjunction with an understanding, like a shift in perspective and a willingness to keep working with that energy so you can make the most of it. And I don't think holding your semen for months and months on end is really beneficial. It within our context of modern society, it doesn't really apply. So I think some holding is great, and that when you like intuitively have a connection to your body and you want to release, that's great. Like I just when I coach men, I'm like I give them a recommendation, but I tell them they need to experiment and figure out what it is for them. Like I know when I need to do that, and I do it gladly and happily and intentionally. And I think it's a great practice to be balanced.
Awesome. Okay. Um, can you like describe the cycling of the energy thing? Like what like in your words, like how does one do that?
Yeah, definitely. So there needs to be an understanding and a practice of breath work. Breath work, like breathing or spirit. The word spirit comes from a Latin word in spiritu, which means spirit. So breath from for a very long time was our understanding of connection to God or spirit. And in fact, a long time ago, we didn't separate ourselves from the universe. It's like the universe or God was like the para atma, which is the highest version of self.
Mm.
So breathing, a cultivation of breath is essential, and then a cultivation of like basically just giving your body attention. Like I could use a bunch of fancy words, but it's literally just like focusing on your body and breathing and coming into awareness that there's a natural orbit in the body, and that orbit, basically the nodes are your pelvic floor or the perineum, like the muscles that we use to hold the pee, and your third eye. And you're moving the energy either up the back and down the front or up the front, down the back. The back channel is the hot channel. So usually men are encouraged to feel and breathe up their back channel and then down their front. That takes some time. So the first, before that, it's really a development of breath and anchoring down into your pelvis and getting a lot of your energy out of your head and moving it down into your abdomen. In TCM and traditional Chinese medicine, they believe that the abdomen is an elixir field. It can transform energy and it can hold a lot of energy. And when I say energy, I mean awareness, like your consciousness, like what you're focusing on. So a lot of us are head driven. We're kind of coming out of a very masculine, overarching society and shifting that into out of the head into the body. So the mind doesn't like this answer. It's like, no, I want to like understand and know these things. And it's a willingness to surrender and trust that your awareness of your body is you moving energy and that you actually know how to do these things inherently. It's a remembering process. So I hope that answers the question
Yeah,
correctly.
totally. Love that. That clears up a lot for me.
Nice.
So with the cycling of the energy though, actually, I just want to ask one more thing. So is that just for men then?
Oh no, it's women
No.
too, for sure. Yeah. So with I'll do a little explanation of I get a little explanation of men, and then I can try my best with women. Similar thing, cycling the energy through the body in this orbit. Women have an orbit too. All things do. Like that's the cool thing. That's the design, right? Like there's an orbit of planets, there's an orbit of the universe. Everything's in an orbit. Everything's in motion. And with women, so for men, holding the seed, right? Holding the seed, and then we do our best to pull that energy up instead of releasing it. So you're almost, you're giving yourself the seed. For women, my understanding is women can have orgasm and still cycle the energy. Women generally lose more of their sexual energy through menstruation. So for women, they have this ability to potentiate themselves through orgasm. Squirting apparently can be a little bit of an energy drain, if people are curious. But yeah, women can also cycle the energy. I find generally, actually, for women, it's more natural because, like, if women can generally have multiple orgasms more readily. But I think for women, it's the shift is a surrendering, it's a letting go into oneself, allowing deepening of pleasure and the releasing of any sort of shame, that the expression of her pleasure is not just beautiful but divine and sacred. And for men, it's an ability to stay present, to allow awareness to broaden and allow stimulation to come in and still hold the presence. So both moving energy, but from a different way. And then when that comes together, it's like exponential.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, no problem.
Um, okay, how did you come to learn about all of this? Like, I was doing a little bit of research on you, and you are a retired respiratory therapist.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So how did you come into this field?
Yeah, let's see. So as I was doing my respiratory therapy education in Kamloops, I was super fascinated by the body. Always have been really fascinated about the moving body. So I was learning yoga. I was going to yoga teacher trainings, and that really opened up my mind to, yeah, different like, esoteric philosophy, energy, these types of things. So that's when I started conducting or like growing a breathwork practice and a movement practice, and also a relationship with spirit. I guess a relationship with energy and a relationship with the unknown. And that path, it's a long story, but that path really led me to connecting to myself in really deep ways. And in addition to that, I just always, as a teenager, I knew that sex was very sacred. There was something inside of me that knew that this is a deeply powerful act, and that's something that I just always understood, but I was never really acting upon it as best as I could, nor did I understand, nor was I being taught. But fast forward when I started doing those yoga teacher trainings, it was probably 2016, 17, and then a couple years later, I went to Peru and I did Wachuma, which is a mescaline-based cactus psychedelic, and that I had a profound experience, which one might call like a Kundalini awakening, but it was a sexual awakening in my body. Like my root and sacral were like, it felt like energy fire was like just ignited, and it shot through my whole body, and I was sustained in this amazing state for like 20 minutes. And the message I got from that was like I felt quite ashamed, and the message I got from the plant was like, don't feel ashamed of your sexuality. Like you can empower people through this, and you being a safe man is important. Like do that work. Um, and yeah, ever since like prior to that, I'd always been curious about sexuality, and I had, created some adult content here and there, and like wanted to dive into those realms. I explored polyamory. Like I was very expressive and open about sexuality. But that moment changed something in me, made me realize like this energy is so powerful and potent, um, and then yeah, I started being curious about that stuff, and then fortunately I had a man named Will Blenderfield who invited me to his sexual kung fu classes, and I was just like, yes, I want to learn about this, and it just shifted something in me. I realized how powerful this practice is, and it was like a confirmation from when I was younger that I knew sex was sacred.
Wow, that's a really cool story. What is sexual kung fu? Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely not like having sex and like I, yeah, I like to make that joke because it sounds like it, right? It's like, are we like doing martial arts and then having sex at the same time? No, so it's kung fu means focus or discipline. One's discipline and sex. So it's like you're focusing and you have a disciplined practice towards sexual energy. And basically, it's a combination of breathing techniques and moving techniques and awareness cultivate sexual energy. So it's a sexual energy practice. Montauk Chia is the guy who's like created it, spearheaded it, and it's rooted in traditional Chinese medicine and universal healing Tao.
Cool. Okay, so you've touched on breath work a couple times. So can you like what kind of breath work do you practice other than like you're saying the breath as part of the cycling of the energy, but do you have like a daily practice that you do as well?
I do, yeah, I do. I practice quite a bit of what's called conscious connected breathing, which is it's a pretty simple practice. It's just connecting your inhales and exhales, like no pause between the two, and you're remaining aware of your breath. And the inhale is more active, the exhale is just passive, kind of this type of a breathing. So that's like kind of my baseline. I always go to that, and then depending on what I want to experience, sometimes I use other different methods that are more activating, like shamanic breathing, which is like a double pump in, relax, exhale. Sometimes tumo, which is where Wim Hof derived his method from. It's like a Tibetan technique. But yeah, I do breath work every day, and I think this, I don't like saying should, but I feel like people should because it's free and it's available to you, and it's literally one of the most powerful things. Like you can just feel nice, or you can have a transcendental experience. It's like when the mystics say it's all available to you, the breath is the key to accessing what's available to you. And I think it shows you too that we're not learning stuff. We're actually just being revealed to what was already inside and already available. So that's a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I practice breath every day.
Thanks for saying that because I have fallen off my breathwork practice, and I know when I was doing it that I was like, this is non-negotiable. Like this, like just it makes life so much better. Like it makes everything flow better. Like yeah, and then there's some sort of it's weird. There's like a weird resistance, but it's like once you start doing it, it's kind of like going to the gym. It's like once you're there and once you're like doing it, it's good. It's like it feels so good and like yeah, it's crazy. It's hard to explain, but just
Mm.
how it makes everything in life flow easier. Like it's less forcing of things in life in general.
Yeah, definitely. If
Yeah.
I may riff off of that just for a second,
Yeah.
I think it's what I like to tell people about breath work so that they don't get into a, let's say, Western like action based like oh tick the box type of mentality is that like one you're breathing all the time and you're already really good at it, and you could literally sit there and just and that would be a great breathwork practice. So to reduce the barrier of entry, it's like you're a pro. You're breathing all the time. You're great at it. The best thing you can do is just sit and be aware of your breathing and maybe breathe a little bit deeper into your abdomen. And another thing is like it's the benefit I think is not like oh yeah I did my breath work, I'm a good person now. It's like you just do it without expectation and for the joy of experiencing the fact that like this is the rhythm of life that's moving through you. And if you can kind of remove those things from your mind and just like allow yourself to breathe for a couple of minutes a day consciously, it will have one of the most detrimental and exponential impacts in your life because we breathe like what 25,000 times a day. And so mathematically speaking, if you're good at math, it's like that 1% shift in the way that you breathe, a bit deeper, a bit more intentionally, has a huge exponential effect on our whole life. And that's why the yogis are like, yeah, breathing, like, they're so obsessed about breathing because it's like changing our physiology all the time.
Thank you for saying the thing about reducing the barrier for entry because it's I do that too in my mind. It's like, oh, like I gotta do an hour long, 45 minutes, like put a eye mask on, like be laying down, like have nobody around me. Like you could literally just be at work, like take a moment and take a few deeper breaths or like, yeah, I don't know. You could do it anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, to reduce that barrier, right? Like, just even if you have a minute at work, just like take a deep breath, make a sound. There you go. You did some breath work. It
Yeah,
really is that easy. And yeah, it's so easy to limit ourselves, I think, in modern society because we look out and we're like, oh, I don't know breathwork techniques. It's like you do. You just you really, really do. Don't pinch yourself off from what's available.
totally. Okay, cool. Let's move on.
Hmm.
Can we go into conscious relationships, conscious sex a little bit? Like,
Oh
have
yeah.
you, when did you become aware of this? Like, is your relationship with Alexia your first conscious relationship, or how's that work in your world?
Yeah, I would say my relationship with Alexia has been like the first or the most conscious relationship. And the reason I say that is because I've decided and chosen in my body and my psyche and every layer of myself as a man that I've devoted myself to her and I'm committed, and never have I really stepped into that or chosen that. Yeah, like I've always really cared about my partners and like been a very loving person, but I realized that it came from a place of fear. I was afraid that I wouldn't be loved, and I was longing to yeah to have someone with me. But with Alexia is this shift where I saw, I don't know how to explain it. I just understood. I was like, this is someone I really want to. be with and learn about. And I feel as though she's the woman who can help me to keep myself in check and become the best version of myself, which is something I've always wanted. And on the note of conscious relationships, I think that's a huge pillar, is that it's not just like I want this experience for myself or I want something for me. It's like I want to co-create with that person and I want them to both celebrate me and show me how I'm not stepping up into my highest. So it's the understanding of the polarity, right? I want the joy and the good stuff, and I also want to know when I'm the darkness, like to see me and hold me and challenge me in my darkness.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the darkness. The I'm in the relationship I'm in is my first conscious relationship as well. And it's can be triggering. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
like your stuff will come up, and then it's like the spiritual ego, and I'm like, oh, like I know these things, but then then things come up, and it's like, oh, I'm not reacting how like I maybe should or whatever.
Mm,
So how do you like? There's no rule book or guidebook for this, so it's like when things come up,
yeah.
it's like, okay, I just try to choose love and try to like work through it as best as possible. But sometimes, like when you're triggered, it's like hard. So,
Mm.
how would you say, like in your experience, how do you like navigate these things? Like if two people are triggered, what's like what are some ways to get through that?
Yeah. So I think it's important to know our biology, like the avatar we're in, or like the meat suit. The idea that we're energy and we're embodied in this. So I think first it's good to know how the body works to a degree and the brain works, so that we can give ourselves compassion when we get triggered. And the first and foremost thing to know is like when you're triggered, it's triggering something like that person is a messenger. They're sending you a message and they're like, hey, your body's like, hey, there's something inside of me that I haven't dealt with.
Yeah.
And it's coming up to be worked on. And then biologically speaking, when you're triggered, your body's like, I could die right now, and I'm gonna shut off the front parts of my brain, like most outer part of my brain, which is what makes you a human, your executive functions. And then you go into either your limbic system, which is your mammalian brain, or you go even further down, basically the brainstem, which is your reptilian brain. And when that happens, you don't have access to forethought or, plans that you may have made, like this is how we're going to handle the trigger, like that goes away. And it's just like, this person's an enemy and a threat, and I need to defend myself. And then
Yeah.
we revert back to childhood, where we usually learn those things from family and social situations. And yeah, we see that person as a threat. So I think it's important to understand that first, and then to create strategies around, okay, so like how does the other person get triggered? How do they show up? Like, I get very anxious, and then when my anxiety is not recognized, I get super angry. So it's like, how does that show up for me? How does it show up for you? And then perhaps asking, like, okay, what do we do? Like, how do we recognize it, and how do we support each other? How do we externalize the trigger and say, like, so we can look at it together and become a team to transmute it, instead of
Mhm.
me versus her or her versus me. It's like us together on a team resolving the trigger.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of conversation and vulnerability about how you get triggered and what you need and support. And I think also making agreement that despite the triggers, if you want to be in a conscious relationship, you're like, we're always connected and we're always going to be working on these things. Not like, okay, one day we'll get to a place where we never get triggered. And da, da, da. No, it's forever. That's the whole point. We get to do it all the time. And it improves, but to not give up on each other and say like, well, I'm going to throw in the towel now because of this, that can be really hurtful.
Yeah, and it's I feel like that's like the easy way out. It's like, oh well, if you're not gonna be this exact way to avoid all my triggers, then I'm gonna leave and like find somebody who will. But it's like obviously those are coming up for a reason. It's not like that person isn't the root of it. Like they're just mirroring back to you whatever you need to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll also say on that note, just to put it into more context, there's some relationships, where there can be a lot of abuse and a lot of triggering, and I'm not condoning or saying like, yeah, just stay in abusive relationship because you're getting triggered and you need to work on it. Prior to this type of container that we're talking about right now, two individuals need to talk about what they need, what they will not tolerate, and what they want. And if those things line up pretty well, go forward and have a conscious relationship. But if it's like red flags all over the place. And, like if you as an individual want to feel free and then also want to be celebrated and work on a relationship, but the other person's like, no, I need to control you and I need to know where you are. Like that's just not gonna work. You got
Yeah.
to be on the eye to eye level in order to work through these things.
Yeah, thanks for saying that because I just got out of a toxic relationship. My last relationship was like super emotionally, mentally abusive. And yeah, I stayed for a long time because I was like, oh, like people can change and like I just need to show up differently and like he'll reflect that and blah blah. It's like, no, actually I need to choose myself and not put up with bullshit behavior. Like,
Yeah,
anyways, yeah. Thanks
I
for saying that.
totally. Oh, you're welcome. I mean, we've all been there, right? And I think those
Yeah.
are necessary lessons too. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, we have to trust ourselves, I think, ultimately. Is this right? Is it feeling good? Do I really want to work on this? And like, yeah, that's how I know with Alexia. It's a knowing inside. I want to do that work with her and show up with her in those ways.
Yeah. And I think that's key as well as the feeling. Like I just remember looking back in the toxic relationship, I always had this unsettled feeling like I needed to like be stiff and
Mm,
like be a certain way so that I wouldn't like trigger like him blowing up or like just always on the edge, like not feeling comfortable, not feeling like I can relax into who I am at all. So yeah, and it's a complete shift like in my current relationship where it's like it just feels like home and it feels like an
mm.
inner knowing that it's just like safe and comfortable. Yeah. It's just like the opposite.
Yeah, that distinction right there is so key.
Yeah.
Like, are you trying to make yourself fit into the ideal of the person, or are you being yourself, revealing yourself, and then also like the other person's doing that, and then figuring out what that is for you? It's such a huge difference. And yeah, because I've done the same where it's like I can't show up in these ways. I won't do these things because they won't like that and receive that. Well, how am I supposed to have a genuine relationship if I don't reveal myself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we dive into Hermetic principles? I have like heard about, I've literally, I think I know like barely anything, but I've heard Aubrey Marcus talk about them before. Like he mentions that a lot. And
Hmm.
I kind of did a little overview. There's seven of them. I seem to love what it was saying, but do you want to like dive into what it is and the Kabbalion or whatever? I think that's where they come from.
Hmm.
Want to dive into that?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, it's great. Um, I think the easiest way to explain this, the way that I explain, is that my interpretation, like what I believe the Hermetic principles are the rules of this universe, like the baseline rules, how things work. And of course, that's super valuable because nowadays sometimes we look to humans for the rules, and I think that this is a philosophy and ideology that can supersede a human because a human's flawed. Humans are always going to have biases. So let's go through them and try to understand them. So, like you said, there's seven, and the seven actually kind of align a little bit with our chakras, which is cool. And yeah, they come from the Kabbalion, which I think I can't remember when it was written, but it's drawn from Egyptian philosophy. Like Hermes was supposedly a human who learned how to transcend the the reincarnation process. So lived for hundreds and hundreds of years and was a very wise being because of this. But yeah, let's go to the principles. So the first one is mentalism. This idea that the universe is a mental projection of the all. And the all took me a while to understand. And it just means, well, it is what it sounds like. It's everything, all. It's both, it's before polarity, it is before all laws, it encompasses everything. It's both everything and nothing. It's what's possible and not possible. And at the same time, it's more than that because it can't be spoken, it can't be named. It's all and it's limitless. So we can only like kind of get close to it, but we can never explain what it is. It's everything.
Can I jump in there? So this is
Yeah.
reminding me of have you ever heard of Neville Goddard?
No, never heard of
Okay.
that.
He's an author from like he's passed, he's from the 50s or whatever. He used to teach on he teaches from the Bible, but he teaches it in a spiritual way, not a religious way. And it's like basically he talks about law of assumption, but the main one of his main principles is everyone and everything is the self pushed out, which is like your world everything that you experience on the physical plane, even your own body, is a reflection of the mind. So like I think this principle kind of aligns with that, where it's like your or like imagination creates reality is another thing that he talks about. It's like your yeah, the mental inner mind is just like the cause, and then the physical reality is the reflection of that. Kind of
Yeah,
reminds me of that.
that's very, very aligned. Yes, it very, very much so. And yes, so that's super important. And like a couple more things I think that are really important to understand is that yeah, so the universe again, mental projection of all that's possible, and that is the substrate or the matrix. Like not just like the negative matrix, but the way that we perceive is the substrate of reality. So I agree with you that like our body and everything that we see is a manifestation of infinite energy. Like what is the all my understanding infinite magnetism or electromagnetism, which is infinite potential, but we're a distillation of that, and we're a distortion of that. So we have the ability to connect to infinite energy, but we have a finite mind and ability. So yeah, to help this maybe come into more understanding, like we are the all, but we're not the all. We're both. It's an and thing. So kind of like Shakespeare, like he's created a character like Hamlet or something like that. So Hamlet, I think that's the name, or a character like that is a character in and of itself. It's a character, but it's also a projection of Shakespeare's mind. So it's both
Mm-hmm.
those things in one,
Yeah.
and we're the same thing. It's like you're Hillary, I'm Brian, I'm a human, and I'm here, and at the same time I'm a projection of infinite energy. So
Yeah.
it's not or, it's and.
Yes. I like that description too. Like
Yeah.
an actor in a play, like
Hmm.
you're playing this character, you're God pretending that you're this character.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like that idea that it's all one thing expressing itself in different ways because it's fun. And yeah, that's like imagine that. Infinite ways to express one thing. It's a weird paradox, but that's how it works. Yeah, so that's the first one, mentalism. That's really important to know. And then as you go lower, it's kind of like, how does it work? Like once something emerges into our universal reality, it's like, well, how does that show up? If we go down to the third eye, there's correspondence, which basically speaks to the idea that as above, so below, as within, so without. So you can understand what's happening in the higher dimensions by looking at what's happening here. It's happening in the same degree. And to me, what that really speaks to is sacred geometry. There's a design to everything. Like the mathematical equation of how a flower grows and blooms is the same as how a galaxy does it. So there is a design and there is an intention within all the disorder and the chaos. And yeah, so if we want to know about what's going on here or going up there or wherever, we can look to what's happening right in front of us.
Mm,
Hmm.
cool.
So that's one's important, like third eye, and then we come down to the throat, which is vibration, which basically just says like everything is emotion. Nothing is static. If it seems static, either it's moving so fast it looks like it's not moving or it's moving so slow. But everything's in motion, and when you understand vibration, you can manipulate anything in reality. So that's why, when we're seeing now the emergence of this, of frequency, we'll probably see it in medicine and many other things, but when you align a certain frequency with another, it can interact in a certain way. And it's important to know that because vibration is, I think, where everything's manifesting out of. So if we look at the physical body, people might think, okay, it ends here or ends in the cells. It's like, no, it goes deeper down to the essence of vibration. So when you understand that and you align yourself, yeah, you're like so many things can change. Like your organs can change, your thoughts can change, physical reality changes depending on how it's vibrating.
I've also heard that like we have an energy field that extends however many meters like beyond the like when you walk into a room and you can sense someone's energy if it's off, like yeah, and everything from like the table to the sky or to the bird or whatever, like everything's made up of particles, and then when you break that down it's all energy, so like we're all connected. Yeah, I like that principle.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, yes, so much so. And I think one thing I'll add about that is people sometimes have asked me, like, how do I understand energy or how do I do this? And that question is, I don't blame the person, but it implies that the energy is outside of them and it's something they need to like attain. And that's one of the greatest things that have been planted in our mind that disconnects us from our power. It's like this, like energy or whatever it is. You don't. It's not something you need to get. It's something you need to accept that you already have, and that's hard because it takes faith. But the way I learned how to move energy was like I just told myself, I'm like, I'm gonna decide that I know how to do this. I'm gonna start working with it now, and like right in this moment, I'm just gonna be like, I have a relationship to energy, and then things started shifting. So it's like don't separate yourself from it. Know that it's already inherent.
Yeah, it's kind of, I forget who says this, but it's like you're so free that you can choose bondage. Like you can choose to think that you're powerless, and then the universe will oblige. It's like whatever you believe will be reflected. So you may as well choose your power and choose choose to like know how to manipulate energy or whatever you're trying to do. Like just you have the power to just decide that you can do it, and to have the faith is like a choice.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, exactly. And the universe doesn't care. That's the thing too, is that's why I say things aren't inherently good and bad. And this can sound really dark, but the universe doesn't care. The universe is just like stuff's happening and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. Your
Yeah.
same thing with your soul. It's like the soul loves joy, but it also likes other things. It's just like, okay, experience stuff.
Yeah.
And then we have our cultural mind of like that's good and that's bad. And so it's good to hold both that like, yes, there are some things that aren't good, for our body and for people and suffering and all these things aren't good. And at the same time, all is just great as it is.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. Paradox again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so vibration. And then we go down to the heart and there's rhythm and everything has a rhythm. So everything moves in and out in a rhythmic fashion. And I didn't understand this one very much at first, but how I've been using it now is understanding. I combine it with polarity, which is the next one that I'll go in, or it's a bit lower, but it's understanding that when you come into a certain state, let's say a vibratory state, happiness, I'm vibrating a certain way, there's a natural rhythm that'll come about, and there's a natural rhythm that it will come out. And everything in life is ebbing and flowing in a rhythm in conjunction with vibration. So just like sexual energy, there's a rhythm to the sexual energy. It has its tides. Everything has a tide, everything moves in and out, and everything's in motion, but it has a rhythm to it. It's not just like rah. It may seem like chaotic, but either you're not looking at it closely enough or you're not looking at it far and out wide enough. Everything has this rhythm. It's always coming in and out like an infinity loop, and essentially.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's the heart chakra. And then if we move down to the solar plexus, there's cause and effect. So every cause or every cause has an effect, and nothing happens on accident. That's a really powerful one. Like, and the idea that there are causers amongst us. This is something in the Kabbalion that there are some who, when you gain enough awareness of these tools, like you're causing things to happen. And most people think they are. I think we've been inundated, like, yeah, you're making things happen, but a lot of times we're just living within a mental framework where we're maybe not making decisions. We're not causing things in our life. We're the effect. So it's good to know that everything happens for a reason. There's no effect in isolation or in a vacuum.
Yeah, I think that comes back to what you were saying about the paradox of like bad and good, and like you can with the universe, it's like it doesn't care what you're doing. Um,
Mm.
like you could choose to go down a negative path where like you're doing destructive things and hurting other people, and you can choose that and whatever. But there is also an effect to that. Like you get what you give out. So like whatever energy you're putting out is what you're going to experience yourself. It's not just hurting other people, you're actually just hurting yourself. So it's the same thing. Like if you choose like the path of love and like grace and forgiveness, and then that comes back to you multiplied. So yeah, I think that's, I don't know, just that's something that came to mind when you said that.
That's so awesome. I love that you said that. I think that's actually such a powerful way to understand cause and effect because you're totally right. It's like so vibration, right? If my vibration is of service and I want to love others, that rhythm eventually is going to go out and back to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives, I think that's such a great thing to say because people might ask, well, like, why be selfless? Like, I want to make sure I'm good. It's like, well, you can make sure you're even better through this principle of like the causes that you bring into the world are going to affect you and others.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so, so that I think that's such yeah, that's a way to look at it. That's a powerful way to look at it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And yeah, I think it's just a lot of yeah, I don't know. I always think like there's people that just don't understand anything about this. Like they're just so unconscious of like, people get in cycles of where like, oh, why does this always happen to me? Like victim mindset, or like they don't understand that like you continuing to talk about it and you continuing to like be in the same energy and focus on the negative is like just you're solidifying that reality for yourself, and you're just yeah, anyway.
Oh
It's so
yeah.
important for people to know that like you have the power to choose something else and break out of like those types of cycles by your actions and the way you speak and the way that you show up, regardless of what anyone else is doing. Like you have that power to shift.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's why I like the Hermetic principles because it's empowering and it shows that when you understand these and you start applying them and you become a student of the principles, yeah, you realize like I am limitless. I can do so many things. There's so much available to me, and yeah, there's much more than the senses. And yeah, that we have a profound effect. And even though there's like so many people and the universe is so big, it's like you can really see the divinity in yourself and what's possible for you.
Mm.
Yeah, and how we're affecting everything. We're connected through this energy, right? Through this
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. So then, yeah, cause and effect, solar plexus, and then we move down to the sacral, and then we have polarity. And this one's huge. To understand this and to embrace it, there's a few layers that I've grabbed from this, and maybe it will stimulate some stuff for you that we could riff off of. But it's the idea that once you're in the 3D or whatever this experience, whatever you want to call it, there's always two. It's like there's the good and the bad, the dark and the light, whatever aspect. It's like you're always going to experience two, and um, that polarity is what creates the experience in and of itself. It gives us contrast, it pushes things forward, it allows for all the things to emerge, and it's where the lessons come from. And when like divine union, it can only happen through polarity.
Mm.
It's like I can't remember the quote, but it's like consciousness wanted to have the joy of coming back into itself once again through sacred union. So as much as like the price of this experience is the pain, but then
Mm.
all comes the amazing other experiences. So polarity is that substrate that there's two varying degrees of one thing, total opposites, but of the same one thing. And from that emerges the duality that we experience. And and the one last thing I'll say is like polarity and rhythm are very closely associated. So enlightened masters or people who really understand this quality and work with it, they can transcend the polarity and rhythm. So it's like, great joy, and then it's like you come down into a slump. Eventually you can transcend that by not bypassing it energetically, emotionally, but understanding it is what it is for what it is and not getting associated to it and not identifying it, but understanding, okay, like I am gonna do this swing back and forth, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like bad luck or good luck. It's not anything like that. It's just this is the nature of my experience, and it's for me, and it's great.
This reminds me of I think it's like a Chinese proverb or something where I might butcher it, but it's just like this man, he's a farmer, it's a guy who's, it's like a story. There's a man who's a farmer and he has like a son, and his son breaks his leg, and then the village people are like, oh, that's horrible, like, and then he's like, oh well, we'll see. And then they're like recruiting for the war, and then his son doesn't get shipped off to the war because he has a broken leg, and they're like, oh, that's amazing, like he didn't have to go to war. Oh, we'll see. And then like all these things keep happening, and it's like it looks negative, it looks positive, it looks negative, it looks positive, and he's just like, oh, we'll see. And he just like doesn't assign a positive or negative, he's just like neutral. And yeah, it just shows, I think, similar to that what you're saying there, like we assign meaning to things where we could just flow with the experience rather than making it mean something.
Yeah, yeah, I know that story, and that's yes, exactly. It's a really good story to help people understand that again, this is like an and thing. We can do the dance of polarity and gain the fruits from it. So, like, let's say something bad happens to you, and you're like, "Oh, that was bad," and that's not bad in of itself. It's just that we should ask ourselves, why did I think that was bad? Why was that hard for me? And what kind of programming or what kind of thoughts do I hold that have labeled that as bad? And even the other side, good. It's like, oh, that was so good. It's so amazing. Well, why? Where did I get that idea from? Who put that program in me and where is that manifesting? If we hold the belief that there's nothing inherently good or bad, we've given ourselves a huge power to understand, like, well, I want to decide if it's good or bad. And then we get to reframe, like, okay, things that I inherently believe are bad, perhaps that can shift. Maybe it can change. And
Yeah.
now we're an active part of the rule that, everything's in constant motion and changing. Like now we're actively in relationship with that.
This also reminded me of something else, like when you're going through, it's like people have traumatic experiences, or like my toxic relationship ended in like such a like gross, like explosive way, and in when you're in it, it's like, oh, this is like the end of the world and it's horrible, and like obviously you're human and you're going to have emotions and things like that, but looking back on it, you can see what you can gain out of things, like even when, like um I'm not saying that it's when people have like childhood traumas that are really messed up and stuff, like it's um people are valid in their like emotions, and
Mhm.
like it sucks that mess up things happen to children and stuff like that, but also you can draw what you like, because you wouldn't be that same person you are today if you didn't go through certain things, and then you can also help others through that are going through the same thing. So like, yeah, you can reframe things, like you can be neutral about things, but then you can also, like you were saying, like draw the fruit from it. Like what have you learned through this, like how have you grown through this? And also, like as a side note, like I listen to a lot of like near death experiences, and I'm actually
Mhm.
interviewing one right after you today.
Oh, cool.
And they talk about like um, choosing experiences in your life, like before you come
Mhm.
into this plane, and like you make agreements with souls, like, oh, I'm going to meet you, and like you're going to play the bad guy, and like,
Yeah.
like you choose this before you come here so that your soul can grow and expand, and I believe that. And anyway, so that's just like a side rant about like we go through bad experiences, but we it's like you said, like it's for a reason, and we can choose to um grow and like love others more through those things rather than stay the victim.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I believe that if we choose to believe that the energy is infinite and that the body is not, meaning
Yeah.
that like what you are in essence, that continues forever, then we give ourselves the opportunity to embrace and adopt everything that you said. That like I also believe that I came into this body to do certain things and I have certain agreements and also believe that I'm a very old soul that I've like just been around for a long time. And that has been such an empowering thing because now it's like I'm not afraid to die. I don't worry about that. And now I can come into my life and also not get so attached to like, someone triggers me or they do something bad. It's like, well, I believe that that was for me in some way. And of course, that can be a really deep thing. Some people go through some horrific, horrific things, and I'm not condoning that or saying that that's good. The action and the idea is to be judged and hopefully changed. And at the same time, like you said, it's those things that allow us to deepen ourselves and often gain gems
Yeah.
because polarity, right? If you go through something terrible, it can be transformed into its opposite. It always has the potential. So I think it's like an and thing too. I used to be like, this is the mentality and you have to adopt this. And now I'm like, if you don't want to adopt that and you're like, some things are good, things are bad, bad luck, da da da. I'm like, yep, that's real. Whatever you want to be is real. That's the cool thing about the whole experience.
Yeah. Is that the bottom one, or there's the root chakra? There's another one.
Yeah, there's the root chakra. And so this one, I'm just going to preface, it can be a bit triggering considering our political climate, but I'm going to try to explain it the best that I can and not try to offend anyone, nor am I trying to push this on anyone. But the last one is gender.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that everything has a mother and a father, essentially, that everything in our, once you emerge into polarity, it's a relationship of the polarity. And it just says that in the polarity, there's like a mother aspect and a father aspect. And you can see how we've adopted this, Mother Nature, Father Sky, various other expressions, but it just kind of says that there's, yeah, a mother and father and everything, that gender is a part of it. Um, and yeah, there's so much to chat about in that context, in that subject. Um, but yeah, that's basically what that one says. That's like the base kind of rule. It's like the foundational, one of the foundational ones.
Yeah. And I think like something to note is with in relationships, like obviously if it's a like two men or two women, like there's still masculine and feminine energy in everybody. So I feel like regardless of what you identify as or what like type of relationship you're in, I feel like those roles come out in some way
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah, I think it's really important to mention like masculine and feminine doesn't mean man or woman. It just means like one side and another side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's like I like to remove like the personification and think of it more as like a charge, like a battery or a magnet. Like one has a positive charge and one has a negative charge. And yeah, so in every human, there is the masculine and the feminine. There is an integrated and unintegrated. There's a dark and light, and we all hold those and we all step into them. It's just that generally men are more masculine, generally men are more feminine, but there's a fractaling of layers in that. There's ways that Alexia shows up for me in a more masculine state, and I might be more feminine in ways. And maybe the overarching theme, like the overarching theme, is I'm in the masculine role, she's in the feminine. But there are other ways in which we teach each other and hold each other in our opposites. So yeah, I think it's important that people understand it's that man doesn't mean masculine. Like masculine is just a non-human associated essence that lives inside of us. Same thing with feminine. It's just it's a polarity.
Mm-hmm. And then, okay, so those are the seven Hermetic principles. So is there anything
Mhm.
else to say about that? Like about those principles in general, like how they're used?
Yeah, I think it's just that from my understanding, what I've adopted is like these are the rules, and it makes things a bit more simple if you just like these are the ways that these like that our reality works, and with that, yeah, you can come into a more powerful experience, a more joyous experience, and you don't have to. That's the beautiful thing. It's like we have free will. We can do whatever we want. But and at the same time, I see these as natural law. This is naturally what's occurring. This is naturally what's going about. So why not work with that? Why not adopt it and try it on? And you know what? If you don't believe me, just try it for yourself and see what it's like to adopt this mentality. Like just try for yourself. Like prove to yourself that it works or it doesn't work. Um, but yeah, a lot of people, they want to know the answer to life, and it's like there is an answer, and then you're also part of the answer. You're connected to that answer. So if you want answers, you gotta kind of meet life there a little bit.
Got to go within. It's not out there anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, right, it's all coming from in here.
Hmm.
People like and this is all real, but it's also coming from the inside.
Yeah, and like yeah, conversations like these or like books or whatever, like those help you awaken or whatever. But yeah, it's nothing replaces that the inner knowing within. Like when you go within like meditation or breathwork or anything like that, then you can connect to that energy like as a felt real experience.
Exactly, yeah. Or maybe one thing I'll add with the Hermetic principles and the way that I offer them, I believe to a degree I'm here to help people like to reconnect to their God self or like the divine, and like remember that these tools just help us to experience and remember that the highest version of you is God, and that or the universe or whatever you want to call it, the highest power. And we don't need to separate ourselves from it. We were separated from it for many reasons, indoctrination and church and stuff like that. But now we can. I want to remind people that like that's already belongs to you. Like it's your birthright to have access to sample this infinite energy in this limited body.
Beautiful. Do you have time to touch on divine masculine and feminine archetypes?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. I'll let you dive into that.
Definitely. First, I should connect you with my business partner, with my business Human Potential Academy, Matthew. I have to credit him for this. I'll dabble a little bit about it, but he created something called the Integration Matrix, and it goes into masculine and feminine archetypes and these different subsets. And the way that we've broken it down is like I mentioned before, an integrated version, an unintegrated version, and then a light and dark aspect. So there's like a light integrated masculine. There's a unintegrated light masculine. There's a integrated light feminine, so on and so forth. And Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of trailing off here. The way that I like to use these is seeing it as essences and seeing it as frameworks so that it's easier for us as individuals to not identify with the things that we're working through inside and see them as these various aspects of ourselves. Because our universe speaks in archetypal language, an archetype meaning like a word that represents many, many things. So I think that's maybe a good start. Like that's the framework that I've used, and yeah, I find it's very, very helpful to see like what category have I landed in, and how do I step out of integration and into integration, which I
Mm.
prefer that word to toxic because, of course, there are things that are toxic, but I like unintegrated because then it gives you the chance to move into integration, and it implies that like integration, unintegration has a place. You can't be integrated unless you're unintegrated. It's a relationship.
So what does that mean, like unintegrated? Like you're just unaware of your behavior?
Yeah, you're unaware and usually you're causing harm. So
Mm.
for example, what we are seeing right now in the world is a lot of unintegrated dark masculine. That's been the overarching. That's what the few who have been controlling have been doing, which is this essence of control, being a tyrant, being malicious, very 3D material world overpowering. Whereas the integrated dark masculine is protecting, ensuring safety. It's a necessary thing, right? Like when you have people coming at you, like the dark masculine is there to hold the ground and ensure that you are safe, that you are protected. Um, so yeah, that's an example.
Okay.
Mhm.
What about the example? What, okay, so can you maybe give an example of the rest of them then?
Yeah, for sure. So I will stick on masculine. So the differentiation I'd say between like light and dark is the dark aspect is very 3D and it's focused on oneself. And this can help people to understand that dark isn't bad, it's just different aspect of the one thing. So and then light is more like focused on others, and is a little it's more like in the ether, maybe the 5D, right? So I talked about the dark masculine, the light masculine, the integrated version is like a good king, like posed, conscious, calm, delegating and asking for help when needed, and grounded in oneself, creating a safe container, a sense of safety, and is leading from a place of integrity, you know, these qualities. And then unintegrated light masculine is kind of like the nice guy, people pleaser, blaming his problems on others, not disciplined, not dedicated, excuses, this type of energy, not taking ownership, and not taking responsibility. And as
Okay.
you can see, that's not just a man. It's like any human who's stepped into that is unintegrated light masculine because masculine's about action, masculine's about yeah, basically doing action things, taking action.
Okay, that surprised me, like, because you're saying light. So to me, I'm like, how is that light if they're blaming others? Like,
Yeah, I know it can get a little convoluted. The way I think about it is like again it has more to do like the dark is more in that like physical material self, and then the light is like how you're relating to others or this outward direction.
okay,
So light also thinking of what's the word I'm trying to use here? Yeah, like the relationship to others. So an integrated light masculine is like I've taken responsibility of myself, and therefore the way that I bring myself forward is of integrity. Rather, the unintegrated light is like I'm going to make excuses and push blame onto others for my inability to, yeah, take responsibility for myself.
okay.
Yeah,
So
if
that's
that makes sense.
that's all four of the masculine.
Yeah, that's all for the
Okay.
masculine. Yeah, and then the feminine, and again, I'm not saying these are the things that we've come up with. We're trying to categorize it. And again, Matt would be a really good person to talk to about it. With the feminine, the dark feminine, let's start with that. So integrated uh, is, I'm trying to remember all the pieces, but one of the main things, and I'm very much in my dark integrated feminine, which is using sexual energy as a form of transcendence and enlightenment and very embodied, very like understanding one's essence and not using that to manipulate, but using that again for celebration and joy. Let's just keep it at that. And then the opposite, the unintegrated, is yeah, using sexual energy or oneself or body for personal gain, for manipulation, these types of things. There are some other qualities, but I can't remember them. I might have to drop them, or I could drop the matrix. And then the light version, the light integrated feminine is like very nurturing, holding space, like the good mother. Um, and the unintegrated is like a coddling mother, like trying to like similar to the dark unintegrated masculine, but a bit different, like trying to control overprotective neuroses. And again, it's not a woman; it's just like that quality.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay. Cool. So then how does like knowing about those, it's just awareness of maybe where you're at and how you can move into integration.
Yeah, I think it's so first like creating a framework like this and being like, okay, what is the masculine energy versus the feminine? How does that show up? Again, removing men and women from it, because sometimes I think people get triggered. They're like, what do you mean men are like doing things and they're like making all these things happen and women aren't? It's like, no, 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 it's not like that. And of course, it's like, yeah, women do so much. They're so freaking powerful. It just shows up in different ways. So it's understanding like what is the framework? Like what are these boxes? And then how do I see myself showing up in those ways? Like, am I showing up in this way? Am I showing up in that way? Really, I think what is required is like seeing, having a bit of an understanding, going out in the world, doing your thing, being yourself as a human, and then reflecting back and asking yourself, like, was I unintegrated in that moment? Was I in a masculine energy or feminine energy? In these contexts, how do I show up? Do I show up in these ways? Um, and then you start to gain an awareness of like, okay, in this situation, I want to step up more in this way. Like, I see that I'm not taking responsibility for my emotions. I want to come into an integrated light masculine state where it's like I take ownership and I'm grounding myself. Yeah, so we have to have understanding of framework, flow into life, reflect, and then change your behavior. That's integration, really, behavior change.
Love it.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna ask like two more questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Sounds
Um,
good.
do you have a book that changed your life that you could recommend to others?
I do, yeah. It was like the book that I read that had my first, I don't really like this word, but we'll use the word like awakening, where I
Hmm.
like woke up. It was the A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. Great book for, diving into an easy way to dive into spirituality and the ego. And I think a really good book now because it talks about what is happening, like this new earth that is emerging. So that just like blew me away. I cried, had to put the book down. I didn't understand what the ego was. Like I was completely identified with self, and then it separated me, and I was like, and I realized all the pain I was causing myself and others. I was in a very right versus wrong mentality. I was like trying to be right, like make sure you're doing things right, don't do things wrong. It just, yeah, changed my whole life.
Wow, amazing. I have that book, but I haven't read it yet, so I'll have to read it.
It's good, yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay, and if you could leave the audience with one message, what would that message be?
My message would be to help people remember, and when you're listening to this, maybe close your eyes, that your body is a sacred, divine, biological mechanism. It's not just like cells and blood and tissue. It is developed for millions of years and it has so much inherent knowledge. And one of the greatest things you can do in your life is to trust that your body is incredibly wise and that you have the ability to have a relationship with it. And that if you choose to do that, you will access so much richness and power in your life. To not give away your sovereignty to any sort of outside source. Of course, at some points in life, we need help to learn about our health and what our body is, but to always give yourself the permission and the right to know that you're most connected to this divine tool and that it will reveal to you all of its beauty and all of its technology and insight if you commence that understanding and that trust and that relationship.
Beautiful message. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining me and coming on the Divine Hangout. It's been amazing.
Yeah, this was awesome. Such a good, easy, seamless flow. Thanks for good questions. Yeah, this is really fun. Flew
Awesome.
by.
Yay. Amazing. Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and see you in the next one. Bye.